When we talk about danger, we usually imagine things close to home: earthquakes, floods, storms, or the slow violence of climate collapsing in front of us. But every once in a while, humanity must face a truth that does not come from the ground beneath our feet, but from far above our heads, from the star that keeps us alive. There is something unsettling, something almost mythic, about the idea that the sun, the same warmth that nourishes our fields and lights our days, hides within it a cycle powerful enough to erase civilizations. But that is exactly what declassified solar data and newly uncovered geological records whisper: that every 12,068 years, the sun undergoes a strange and catastrophic transformation, a pulse of energy so intense it can rewrite the surface of the Earth. And if those patterns are real, then we are standing dangerously close to the next one. Imagine the sun not as a stable furnace, but as a breathing giant. Every breath it takes lasts millennia. For long stretches it exudes balance, solar winds steady, magnetic fields controlled, radiation within predictable bounds. But then, like some dormant beast stretching after a long sleep, its magnetic core twists, its plasma churns too violently, and it releases energy in waves that shake the planet from pole to pole. For decades, scientists dismissed the idea as fringe theory, something best left to speculative documentaries. But that changed when declassified military observations matched ancient tree ring anomalies, ice core spikes, ocean sediment layers, and even long-forgotten historical accounts. All of them pointed to the same number: 12,000 years. And the last time the cycle flipped was around 10,500 BCE. The next one is no longer centuries away. It is within the lifetime of our species, perhaps even within a few decades. Picture the sun as it appears to us, a perfect circle of blazing serenity, but beneath that apparent calm lies a magnetic engine in constant turmoil. Normally, these fluctuations cause harmless sunspots, or auroras. But during a solar catastrophe window, that magnetic engine behaves unpredictably. Plasma ropes tens of thousands of kilometers long snap and reconnect, forming solar flares that dwarf anything we have witnessed in human history. Coronal mass ejections, billions of tons of charged particles, shoot outward at speeds that make light itself seem impatient. If such an ejection hits Earth, the planet becomes temporarily transparent to cosmic fury. The atmosphere trembles, the magnetic shield bends, satellites fry like insects on a lantern. But this is only the beginning, because the sun's tantrum does not last for a few minutes. It can last for months. Think of the Carrington event of 1859, the most powerful solar storm in recorded history. Telegraph lines burst into flame. Operators received electric shocks. The night sky glowed like dawn, and auroras were visible near the equator. And yet, compared to the 12 millennia solar pulses, Carrington was nothing more than a flicker. In the declassified documents, scientists had quietly compared the isotope signatures in 1859 with far older signatures found in ice cores from 12,068 years ago. The difference was not subtle, it was catastrophic. The ancient spike was nearly 50 times stronger. Imagine a flare so powerful that every power grid on Earth collapses instantly. Imagine months without electronics, months of global darkness interrupted only by auroras so bright they paint oceans with ghostly light. Imagine radiation bursts that quietly rewrite the DNA of life near the surface. This is not the apocalypse born from fiction. It is an event written in the Earth's crust, stored like a warning. But the strangest part is that ancient cultures seem to know something about this cycle long before science discovered it. The Maya, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and even distant tribes in the Arctic all described a period where the sun changed shape, where the sky split open, or where a second dawn scorched the land. For centuries, these accounts were treated as mythology, poetic exaggerations carved onto stone. But modern researchers, comparing these descriptions with plasma physics and magnetosphere simulations, found uncanny parallels. Ancient stories of rivers of fire falling from the sky align with CME-induced atmospheric compression. Tales of a day that lasted a heartbeat mirror recordings of magnetospheric collapse. Even petroglyphs depicting swirling spirals match the auroral structures simulated during ultra-extreme solar storms. It is as if the survivors of the last cycle tried to leave a message across time, and we simply forgot how to read it. So how does the sun remember this cycle? Why 12,068 years? One theory suggests that deep beneath the surface of the sun lies a magnetic shell that flips only when internal pressure reaches a critical threshold. Another theory proposes that the solar system itself moves through regions of the galaxy dense with charged particles, pushing the sun into states of instability. And a third theory, more controversial, suggests that gravitational harmonics between planets subtly push the sun into these periodic metamorphoses, like a drum being struck by invisible hands. Whatever the cause, the effect is undeniable. Each cycle leaves behind scars in ice, stone, and story. Now, imagine the moment the cycle peaks. Not instantly, not with an explosion, but with a slow escalation that the world initially mistakes for coincidence. Satellites begin to malfunction, first in isolated patches, communication outages blamed on storms, GPS drift dismissed as technical errors. Then come odd atmospheric anomalies, sudden bright auroras in regions that have never seen them, microflashes in the upper atmosphere, compasses twitching like nervous animals. Planes fly strange detours because their instruments behave erratically. Power stations activate emergency protocols, and then, without warning, the sun unleashes a flare so large that it becomes visible even during daylight. People look up and see a white wound tearing across the solar disk. They do not understand what it means, but they feel the ancient instinct of fear rising like cold water along their spine. In the following hours, Earth's magnetic field compresses as if being crushed between celestial hands. Power grids trip, transformers overload. Internet backbones fail not because of damage, but because the timing signals that synchronize the network drift into chaos. Stock markets freeze, satellites tumble. Space agencies issue emergency alerts, but many of their systems are already crippled. For the first time in modern history, the digital world dissolves. And as night falls, the sky glows in curtains of electric green, bloody red, and violet spirals that dance over silent cities. It is beautiful in the way that death sometimes is, mesmerizing, poetic, terrifying. But the real danger comes next. Extreme solar storms can heat the upper layers of the atmosphere, causing rapid expansion. This expansion increases drag on satellites, causing them to fall unpredictably. Imagine hundreds of satellites re-entering the atmosphere within weeks, their trails carving fiery lines across the night sky. Imagine the Earth's magnetic field weakening, allowing bursts of radiation to reach the ground. Aviation routes near the poles become lethal. Power plants struggle as geomagnetically induced currents surge through the grid like invisible lightning snakes. The declassified reports paint an even more chilling picture. That during the last cycle, sea levels rose rapidly not just from melting ice, but from tectonic activity triggered by solar-induced geomagnetic strain. Some researchers believe this strain destabilizes fractures beneath the crust, leading to clusters of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and rapid climatic shifts. In that forgotten era, entire coastlines may have vanished within a generation. Humanity survived, but it was forced into silence, a reset not caused by war, but by the sun's own heartbeat. And so we find ourselves here, walking unknowingly toward a cycle older than civilization. We are more advanced than any people who came before us. Yet our dependence on electrical technology makes us more vulnerable than ever. A single solar catastrophe could erase satellites, power grids, data centers, communication networks, everything that defines modern life. The irony is cruel. The more advanced we become, the more fragile our foundations appear beneath the gaze of our own star. But there is another layer to this. If the sun's 12 millennia pattern is predictable, then perhaps what we fear is not destruction, but transformation, because every cycle seems to mark a turning point in human history. Migrations, unexplained collapses, sudden technological or cultural leaps. It is as if periodic solar chaos shakes the world like a tree, shedding old leaves so new ones can grow. Not a punishment, but a reset. A forced renewal. A reminder that no matter how much control we believe we have, the cosmos still holds the final word. And now, as scientists quietly reanalyze solar data and governments revise their emergency protocols in silence, one question stands at the edge of the void. If the sun is preparing to breathe again, what will the next exhalation rewrite? Will we be witnesses to a spectacle that has shaped every chapter of human existence? Or will we become another layer in geological memory, Another forgotten civilization that thought it was immune to the cycles of the sky? Because somewhere out there, behind that blinding brilliance we call daylight, the solar clock is ticking, and its next alarm may already be ringing. There is a strange silence hidden inside the world's oldest calendars. A silence that doesn't belong to lost languages, forgotten empires, or eroded monuments, but to something far more unsettling. Something that every ancient civilization seemed to sense, record, and fear. Across continents, across cultures separated by oceans and millennia, their calendars do something eerie. They stop. They end abruptly. They freeze at the same mysterious point in time, as if all of humanity, in different corners of the world, heard the same cosmic clock strike the same final hour. And the more you look at this pattern, the more it feels as if the ancient world was not marking dates. It was warning us. Imagine an old stone calendar carved into the wall of a temple. Dust settles into its grooves. Centuries have passed, and the meaning of the symbols is a riddle only the dead understand. But then you see the last line, the final entry, and it stops. Not with a natural end, but like a breath cut short. In Mesoamerica, in the Indus Valley, in Mesopotamia, in China, in the enigmatic petroglyphs of the Arctic tribes, and in the drowned ruins near Mediterranean shores, the pattern repeats. Their calendars extend for thousands of years, marking solstices, eclipses, star risings, harvest cycles, migrations, dynasties, until, without reason, they all point to a similar moment. A moment roughly 12,000 years ago, a moment they recorded as the end of an age. Most people know of the Mayan long count calendar, the one modern culture sensationalized in 2012 as the end of the world. But the truth is more cryptic. The Maya were not predicting destruction. They were referencing the end of a cosmic cycle, a cycle they believed resets after a long, unimaginable span of time. And when scholars compared the long count's endpoint with astronomical reconstructions, it corresponded eerily with a global magnetic upheaval that occurred around 10,500 BCE. The calendar didn't end because the Maya ran out of space. It ended because they believed humanity had lived through a cycle-ending catastrophe once, and that the same cycle would inevitably return. But the Maya were not alone. The ancient Egyptians kept a calendar that appears to stretch back into the mists of prehistory, one many Egyptologists quietly admit seems too precise, too mathematically elegant, to belong solely to the dynasties we know. Their Zep Tepi, the first time, was described not as a mythical golden age, but as the rebirth of the world after a violent upheaval. Their star alignments, particularly with Orion and Sirius, point to the same epoch of around 10,500 BCE. Even their temple inscriptions imply that time began again after a great cleansing of the sky. If the Maya said time cycles, the Egyptians said time resets. Different words, same fear. In China, the Xia and Shang dynasties referenced broken heavens, a period where the sky's alignment ruptured. Their myth of Nuwa repairing the sky is often treated as storybook lore, but the calendar layers hidden within the legend are disturbingly similar to those in Mesoamerica. A cycle ends, a cycle begins, a celestial damage is repaired, and humanity rises again from the ruins of its own forgotten chapters. The ancient Sumerians preserved tablets that mention a time before the great floods, before kingship descended again upon the land. Their king list is bizarre because it describes reigns lasting thousands of years, as if time itself flowed differently during earlier ages. But what's even stranger is how the list abruptly shifts after an event they simply call the deluge. When scientists examined sediment cores from the Tigris-Euphrates region, they found evidence of an abrupt global climatic shock precisely within the same millennium as Egyptian, Maya, and Arctic cycle endings. Did they all experience the same solar-driven disruption, or did they merely record the aftermath, a world forced to restart? Consider Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, one of the oldest ritual sites ever discovered. Archaeologists were stunned not just by its age, 11,600 years old, but by its intentional burial. It was not destroyed by enemies or abandonment. It was buried deliberately by its builders, entombed as if sealing away a memory too heavy for the next generation. Astrophysicists analyzing the pillars found carved patterns that resemble sky maps, including depictions of a meteor stream event that happened around 10,900 BCE. Again, We see the fingerprints of the same window in time, the same era where global climate, geomagnetism, sea levels, and cosmic events converged into something humanity had to survive. What makes this convergence even more eerie is that none of these civilizations interacted. They did not trade stories or share knowledge across oceans. The Olmecs did not speak with the pharaohs. The Arctic tribes did not consult the Indian astronomer priests. And yet, their calendars, different symbols, different myths, different languages, stop at the same cycle's boundary. It is almost as if they all remembered something we no longer do. A moment so significant, so scarring, it reset their understanding of time itself. Imagine being alive in those forgotten centuries. Imagine the sky behaving unpredictably, the seasons collapsing, the sun growing violent, auroras spilling across the equator, magnetic fields twisting compasses that did not yet exist. Imagine coastlines drowning as ice sheets buckled under sudden warmth or cosmic energy impacts. Imagine entire tribes migrating, carrying stories of a time when the heavens roared and the world changed shape. Those stories, over thousands of years, became myths. Those myths became calendar resets. And those resets became the silent warnings etched into stone. Modern scientists rarely speak openly about these convergences, not because the data is weak, but because connecting ancient calendars to cosmic cycles inches dangerously close to territory academia prefers to avoid. But beneath the quiet, you can see the growing unease. In geology labs, in paleomagnetic studies, in solar observation departments, in the ice cores of Antarctica. All of them reveal periodic spikes, sharp shifts that align roughly every 12 millennia. And the last one, according to these records, ended around the same time all those ancient calendars froze. When you analyze these ancient systems, something else becomes clear. They weren't simply marking days, they were tracking the heavens. The Maya tracked the sun's cycles with uncanny precision. The Egyptians carved stellar procession into their temples. The Vedic scholars in India mapped cosmic ages called yugas, which astonishingly align with the same long-term cycles. Even the Norse Ragnarok myth describes the sun behaving unnaturally and the world ending in fire before being reborn. Across the world, different cultures described the same pattern: an age of order, followed by an age of chaos, followed by renewal. But the most disturbing question is this: why did so many ancient calendars end rather than continue? Why did their systems freeze instead of roll forward? It is not because they ran out of interest. It is because in their worldview, time was not linear. It was circular. When the cycle completes, the wheel resets, and humanity begins again. Now imagine this realization sinking in. If every major ancient calendar froze at the end of the last cycle, and if the cycle length is roughly 12,000 years, then we are now standing at the edge of the next turn. The ancient world did not warn us out of superstition. They warned us out of memory. They wrote their fear into stone so that those who come later, us, might look up at the sky with the same caution, the same trembling awareness that time itself has a heartbeat, and that heartbeat might be nearing its next tremor. What does it mean for a calendar to end? Not doom, not destruction, but transition, a shift, a rebalancing. The ancients believed that every cycle end purifies the earth, restructures civilization, and redefines the relationship between humanity and the cosmos. For them, the end of the calendar was not a date. It was an event, a moment when the world pauses, holds its breath, and becomes something new. Now picture this. Somewhere in a museum, behind a glass case, sits a cracked stone disc from a forgotten culture. Tourists walk past it, unaware that its final carved line points to the same moment recorded in Maya glyphs, Egyptian star charts, Vedic cosmology, Chinese myth calendars, and Sumerian king lists. These aren't coincidences. These aren't independent imaginations. These are echoes. Echoes of a cycle that has turned many times before. Echoes of a moment when the world resets. Echoes written by hands that lived through the last ending. And now, as astronomical cycles align, as solar activity rises, as magnetic poles drift faster than any time in recorded history, we are left with a question humanity has not asked sincerely for thousands of years. What did the ancients see at the end of their world? And are we about to see it too? There is a moment when you stand before an ancient monument, a pyramid, a stone pillar, a weathered idol, and you feel something deeper than history staring back at you. Something older than writing, older than civilization, older even than the shape of continents. For centuries, we believed these structures were scarred by wind, rain, earthquakes, and time. But now, as new forensic scanning tools sweep across the stone, a different, almost terrifying picture is emerging. The scars are not random. The patterns are not natural. And many of the marks etched into these ancient surfaces resemble something that should not exist outside a laboratory or a lightning test chamber, a high-energy plasma discharge. It sounds unreal at first. Plasma discharges are the same violent electrical arcs that leap across fusion reactors, that tear through power lines during storms, that dance across the sky during rare atmospheric anomalies. They are the universe's raw language of energy, lightning, but not the kind that moves through air. This is lightning that moves across stone, carving its signature like a god's handwriting. And somehow, thousands of years ago, monuments across the world recorded those signatures as if the sky had once pressed down on Earth with electric claws. Imagine standing at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its limestone blocks are vast, weathered, cracked, but hidden between the cracks are microscopic Lichtenberg figures, branching, fern-like patterns identical to those created when lightning strikes sand or metal. These are not erosion marks, they are electrical fractals, and they appear in places lightning cannot reach, underneath layered casing stones, deep within chambers, on surfaces that were covered for millennia. It means the electricity didn't come from outside, it came through the structure. Now imagine Göbekli Tepe's pillars in Turkey, circular cuts that don't match rain channels, melt like ripples along the edges where the stone appears to have briefly turned plastic under intense heat. Patterns that match laboratory plasma instabilities rather than geological weathering. Scans show microglass bubbles inside the stone, as if something had heated the surface to thousands of degrees instantly and then cooled it in an instant. Nature does not do this. Time does not do this. But electrical arcs do. Plasma does. Move across the world to Easter Island. The Moai statues stand like silent watchers, but beneath the moss and lichen, they carry the same branching burn marks, the same smooth surfaces, the same unnatural pitting, as if lightning had once wrapped around their bodies like serpents. But Easter Island has no history of volcanic lightning strong enough to carve stone. These formations are not the result of storms. They are the result of something far more global, far more coordinated, far more catastrophic. What could leave identical plasma scars on structures separated by continents? What could reach across all of Earth, carving the same signatures from Peru to Egypt, from Turkey to Japan, from India's megaliths to the canyon walls of Arizona? The answer points back to the sun. During periods of extreme solar instability, like the catastrophic 12,000-year cycle scientists quietly whisper about, the sun can unleash superflares, not billions, but trillions of tons of charged particles. When these waves collide with Earth's magnetic field, they create currents so strong they move through the planet's surface like invisible rivers of electricity. Buildings, mountains, statues, anything conductive becomes a canvas for cosmic lightning. Because the truth is this: plasma does not always fall from the sky. Sometimes it rises from the ground. Picture Earth as an enormous battery. During mild solar storms, the current flows gently, guiding auroras across the poles. But during extreme storms, the magnetic field compresses violently. Electric charge is forced into the crust, where it travels along fault lines, mineral deposits, and the stone of ancient monuments. The result is plasma discharge, electrical arcs shooting out of the ground, into the air, into anything standing tall enough to attract the current. This is not fantasy. We have seen hints of it in modern times. During the Carrington event of 1859, telegraph poles caught fire, metal lines melted, and arcs jumped between wires with enough force to burn operators. In 1989, a mild geomagnetic storm collapsed Quebec's power grid in less than 2 minutes as induced currents surged through the Earth itself. Now imagine storms not 10 times stronger, but hundreds, thousands. Imagine the ground itself becoming electrified. When researchers carefully mapped the location of plasma-scarred sites, a disturbing pattern emerged. Many of them sit upon or near major fault lines or magnetic anomalies. The pyramids of Egypt. the Nazca Plateau in Peru, the stone circles of Britain, the megalithic complexes of India, the Moai, Gobekli Tepe, even the strange petroglyphs carved into canyon walls in the American Southwest, petroglyphs that depict swirling shapes identical to the instabilities seen in plasma experiments at high-voltage research labs. Why would ancient people carve plasma patterns into stone unless they saw them? Plasma instabilities form shapes like spirals, hourglasses, stacked donuts, branching trees, and twisting ropes. These same forms appear in ancient rock art. Spirals next to figures raising their hands in terror, shapes that look like double-lobed torches, patterns resembling braided ropes descending from the sky. Archaeologists long thought these were symbolic representations of gods or spirits, but plasma physicists look at them and say, that's an instability, that's a double helix arc, that's a polar plume, that's a Birkeland current. It is as if the artists were not drawing myths, they were drawing what they saw in the sky. Electrical storms so powerful they carved the world. On the granite slabs of Pumapunku in Bolivia, there are melt zones where the stone's crystalline structure has been fractured by sudden, intense energy. The surfaces are smooth in unnatural ways, as if they were once softened by electric heat. And again, the same plasma burn scars appear, almost identical to those on Egyptian stone, even though the cultures had no contact and lived oceans apart. In India, the Kailasa temple, carved from a single monolithic rock, displays pitting around edges that cannot be explained by chisels. Laboratory tests show that these pits resemble electrical spallation, a process where high-energy plasma causes the stone to explode outward in small chips. The same process is observed in nuclear testing and high-voltage industrial arcs. Yet here it is on a temple thousands of years old. In Petra, Jordan, the treasury's facade shows subtle electrical etching patterns on the columns, patterns that match Tesla coil discharge experiments. Plato once wrote that the ancients witnessed fire descending from the heavens, but maybe he had it backward, and maybe the fire erupted upward from ground to sky as Earth's internal currents searched for equilibrium during an ancient solar storm. Imagine the night sky during such an event. Imagine standing in a world without skyscrapers, without artificial lights, without power grids. The sun has erupted. The magnetic field is unstable. The atmosphere is ionized. Instead of darkness, the night burns in sheets of emerald and violet. You hear cracking sounds from the ground, like stone itself is groaning. Hair rises, skin tingles, and then plasma arcs erupt upward from mountaintops, temples, trees, your own tools. Sparks dance along the edges of stone monuments, as if the gods are tracing their fingertips across the earth. The air tastes metallic. The sky feels alive. It is no wonder ancient people thought the heavens were angry. No wonder they carved what they saw. No wonder they built myths around gods wielding thunder, lightning, and fire. Zeus, Indra, Thor, Ra. They weren't describing fantasy. They were describing memory. If these plasma discharge scars are truly global, and they are, then they represent something more profound than natural erosion. They represent a shared trauma, a moment when the Earth convulsed electrically, when civilizations were reset not by war, but by the sky itself. And now, modern scientists quietly admit that Earth's magnetic field is weakening faster than expected. The poles are drifting. The sun is stirring. We are sliding toward another peak in solar activity. And if the 12,000-year cycle is real, then the world may once again witness the kind of plasma storms that carved signatures into the bones of our oldest monuments. The ancients had no satellites, no electronics, no digital world to lose. But we do. And if the sun sends another flood of plasma, it won't just carve stone. It will carve history. It will carve civilization. It will carve the future. Because plasma does not care who we are. It only follows the laws of physics. And the monuments that survived the last cycle, scarred, burned, etched, may be the only reason we know what's coming. They are warnings written in lightning. There are stories buried in history that feel less like forgotten chapters and more like forbidden pages. Pages that were torn out deliberately, quietly, without leaving a trace. Nikola Tesla's chronoresonance equations belong to that kind of silence. They are the kind of secrets that do not fade. They are erased. And yet, like all erased truths, they have a way of resurfacing, not loudly, not dramatically, but in fragments, in whispers, in rediscovered notes that tremble with implications too vast to ignore. Most people know Tesla as the father of electricity, the man who dreamed in currents and built the backbone of modern civilization. But Tesla himself once said that electricity was only the beginning, that what we call energy, space, and time were threads of the same cosmic fabric, waiting for someone to pluck them in the right sequence. And somewhere in the late years of his life, when his experiments grew stranger and quieter, he began working on equations that did not describe electrical circuits, but temporal ones. He called them chronoresonance, the idea that time itself vibrates, pulses, hums, with a frequency that can be calculated, predicted, even influenced. To Tesla, time wasn't a line, it wasn't a flow, it was a field. And like all fields, it could be disturbed. When he died in 1943, inside room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel, government agents seized his documents within hours. The public was told it was about national security, but those who examined the papers, those whose names were scrubbed from official reports, said Tesla's final work contained something more unsettling than weapons. His notebooks hinted at equations that treated time like a wave, not a dimension, a wave that rises and falls with cycles, a wave that repeats itself every 12,000 years, a wave that could explain why civilizations rise and fall in patterns we never understood. For decades, these equations were assumed destroyed, but recently, pieces of Tesla's missing notebooks have resurfaced. Auction fragments, private notes passed between collectors, declassified paragraphs accidentally revealed in old FBI memos, and when you combine the pieces, when you let them overlap like puzzle fragments that were never meant to be found, a strange picture emerges. Tesla believed the universe has a heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse, a repeating resonance. He believed the cosmos oscillates through predictable cycles, each lasting roughly 12 millennia, cycles marked by spikes in solar activity, magnetic reversals, atmospheric peaks, and disruptions in what he called the temporal coherence of Earth. In one recovered note, he wrote, "Time is not the river, it is the tide, and tides return." Think about that. Think about the implications. If time has tides, then history does not move forward. It moves in loops. Not identical loops, but resonant ones, where certain events, certain conditions, certain structures repeat like echoes of a cosmic drumbeat. Tesla believed we were approaching the crest of such a tide, and he didn't just write this poetically, he calculated it. He used solar activity data, Schumann resonance frequencies, orbital drift models, and energy density fluctuations in the Earth's ionosphere. He mapped them, searching for patterns, and he found one that matched ancient calendars, geological records, and cosmic radiation spikes with unnerving precision. Tesla's chronoresonance equations suggested that every 12,000 years, the sun enters a phase of hyperactivity, generating electric storms so intense they distort the electromagnetic fabric of space-time around Earth. To most physicists, that would sound like metaphor. But to Tesla, electromagnetism and time were not separate. They were the same entity vibrating at different frequencies. If this is true, then tragic cycles in our history, civilization collapses, unexplained extinctions, lost knowledge, may not be random. They may be rhythmic responses to the sun's periodic storms. Plasma arcs, geomagnetic chaos, planetary resets. And Tesla believed the next resonance peak was approaching. But here is the part that makes your pulse slow, the part that feels like stepping into forbidden ground. Some of Tesla's equations weren't about predicting these cycles. They were about interfering with them. In several resurfaced notes, Tesla uses language that borders on impossible, terms like temporal stabilization, chronometric dampening, and harmonic deflection. It sounds like science fiction until you remember that this is the man who predicted wireless communication, radar, drones, AC electricity, and remote power transmission decades before anyone else saw them coming. When Tesla speculated, it was often a premonition disguised as imagination. One fragment, written in his sharp, restless handwriting, reads, "If time is the echo of energy, then by altering the energy, we alter the echo." This is the seed of a terrifying idea. If the sun triggers the 12,000-year resonance cycle, could we shield ourselves from it? Could we disrupt the resonance? Could we step outside the loop? Tesla hinted that the Earth's magnetic field might act as a tuning fork, vibrating in harmony with the solar cycle. If someone could change the frequency of the tuning fork, even slightly, they could push Earth into temporal incoherence, a state where the cycle breaks, where history deviates from its cosmic pattern. Was Tesla trying to break the cycle, or was he trying to warn us that we were powerless against it? One rediscovered document, a partial blueprint, describes a device similar to his magnifying transmitter, but with design elements that do not appear in any of his known electrical work. Coils arranged in spiraling angles, spherical capacitors aligned with astronomical positions, a grounding system triangulated between 3 points on Earth, mimicking ancient megalithic alignments rather than scientific equipment. It looks less like a machine and more like a ritual, a technological invocation, a resonance tuner. What makes this even stranger is how much Tesla's sketches resemble ancient structures. Stone circles that align with geomagnetic anomalies, pyramids placed along global energy lines, temples built atop fault lines that amplify electromagnetic charge. Were ancient civilizations trying to tune the Earth's resonance too? Were they responding to the same cosmic cycles Tesla rediscovered? If these resurfacing notes are real, then Tesla may not have been alone in knowing. He may have simply been the latest in a long lineage of people who glimpsed the pattern. The ancients encoded it in architecture. Tesla encoded it in equations. There is also something chilling about how quickly government agencies seized Tesla's work after his death. One FBI memo, partially declassified, mentions papers concerning advanced frequencies that may influence the temporal order. Another refers to resonance theories of strategic concern. Why would time-related equations be a national security threat unless they carried implications far beyond physics? Now picture this. Tesla's chronoresonance equations say the next cycle peak occurs when solar activity, Earth's weakening magnetic shield, and cosmic radiation align in a specific harmonic configuration. That same configuration is approaching now, for the first time since the last great upheaval over 12,000 years ago. The magnetic poles are drifting at unprecedented speeds. The sun is awakening. Plasma storms are increasing. Time, if Tesla was right, is trembling at the edges. What if the cycle isn't just environmental? What if it's temporal? What if history itself is beginning to repeat? What if events, choices, technologies, and crises echo like waves returning to shore? Think about how civilizations today mirror those of the past. Rapid growth, advanced technology, unexpected fragility. Think about how ancient stories warn of days when the sky changed color, when the ground hummed with electricity, when the sun behaved unnaturally. Think about the global monuments scarred by plasma. Think about the calendars freezing. Think about how all of these align with Tesla's cycle. Now imagine Tesla sitting alone in his dim hotel room in 1943, hunched over the last pages of his life's work. Outside, the world believed he had faded into irrelevance, but inside those pages, he was trying to calculate something extraordinary, something no one else dared to touch, a universal rhythm, a clock older than humanity, a countdown. And perhaps he knew the truth. You cannot stop the tide, but you can ride it. You can prepare for it. You can resonate with it, or be erased by it. Tesla's chronoresonance equations are resurfacing now, not by coincidence, but by timing. They are reappearing because the cycle they describe is approaching its crest, because the tides of time are rising again, because the universe hums with the same frequency it hummed with 12,000 years ago, because history is beginning to vibrate. And if Tesla was right, then we are about to feel the resonance ourselves. There are moments in Earth's history when the planet does something so strange, so monumental that it reshapes everything living on its surface. Not through fire, not through water, but through an invisible force that humans rarely think about. The magnetic field. We live inside this field like fish inside an ocean. It shields us, guides us, subtly calibrates our minds, our hormones, our awareness. It is the silent architecture of reality that we never see, yet unknowingly trust with every breath we take. And every few tens of thousands of years, this magnetic field does something unthinkable. It flips. North becomes south, south becomes north, and the world enters a period of magnetic chaos. But beneath the geological violence of this reversal lies a deeper, more mysterious possibility. that such events don't only reshape the planet, they reshape consciousness itself. Scientists have long known that magnetic pole reversals happen. They are etched into volcanic rocks, frozen into seafloor crust, recorded in layers of iron-rich clay. Like a heartbeat, Earth's polarity has flipped again and again across millions of years. But what no one truly understood, until recently, is what happens during the transition. For thousands of years, the magnetic field weakens, wanders, and fractures. The shield thins. Cosmic radiation increases. Electrical storms multiply. The environment becomes unstable in ways that defy easy explanation. And during these windows in time, something else happens. Something that humanity does not remember consciously, but carries like a scar in its mythologies, religions, and collective traumas. Entire civilizations collapse and reappear with new mental frameworks, new symbolic languages, new ways of perceiving reality. Could the magnetic field influence consciousness? Could a planetary polarity shift trigger a reset in how the human mind experiences time, memory, identity? The idea sounds impossible, until you realize we already know that magnetic fields affect biological systems. Birds navigate by them, whales migrate along them, bacteria align with them. Even the human brain, with its whispers of bioelectricity and subtle quantum processes, responds to electromagnetic shifts in ways we barely understand. The pineal gland, a small crystalline structure deep in the brain, is magnetically sensitive. It regulates circadian cycles, dream states, emotional rhythms. It is the seat of many mystical traditions, precisely because it reacts to the invisible. Now, imagine that delicate organ in a world where Earth's magnetic field collapses to 10% of its usual strength. Imagine solar storms roiling the atmosphere, auroras rippling across the sky every night, cosmic rays penetrating deeper into the Earth than ever before. Imagine the planet humming with electrical currents, fault lines lighting up, animals behaving strangely, and the ionosphere crackling with energy. In such an environment, the human mind would not simply be influenced, it would be overwhelmed. During a magnetic reversal, the field does not flip cleanly. It fragments, it scatters. Multiple poles appear in random places, like compass needles gone mad. Some parts of the world may feel almost no magnetic field at all. Others may feel swirling distortions. In these conditions, the brain's delicate electromagnetic balance could shift dramatically. Sleep patterns break. Emotional rhythms invert. The line between waking and dreaming thins. People experience hallucinations, prophetic visions, disorientation, heightened intuition. What we call mystical states may become unavoidable biological responses to a world without a stable magnetic grid. Ancient cultures described periods when the sky fell, the world turned upside down, or the sun rose where it never had before. Historians interpret these as symbolic tales, but what if they were descriptions of actual magnetic chaos? The Aboriginal Dreamtime stories speak of days when reality became fluid and consciousness expanded beyond the body. The Vedic texts describe yugas, where the mind of man transforms drastically. The Egyptians wrote of periods when the gods renewed the hearts of men, suggesting psychological resets more than divine miracles. Even Plato talked about a cyclical destruction that did not wipe out humanity physically, but mentally, a forgetting so profound that every new age had to rebuild knowledge from the ground up. If magnetic reversals destabilize not only climate and geology, but perception, then the past becomes a cycle, not only of physical resets, but of consciousness resets. Humans may have lived through eras where their awareness, how they processed reality, how they understood time, identity, society, shifted on a species-wide level. Imagine generations born into a world humming with electrical storms, the air thick with ionization, the nights painted with auroras. Their minds would evolve under different environmental pressures than ours. Their emotional baselines would shift, their dreams would become more vivid, their mythologies would fill with electric skies and shimmering spirits. Their sense of self might fracture or expand. Now, imagine what happens when the magnetic field stabilizes again. The transformation's slow, the brain returns to equilibrium. Civilizations build from scratch, but something remains. Echoes, symbols, stories. Memories not of events, but of consciousness states. And these memories become religions, mysteries, prophecies, ancient warnings etched into stone by people who experienced a world where reality shifted in ways we cannot imagine. Today, most people think magnetic reversals are millions of years apart, but that's not true. The last full reversal was 780,000 years ago, but Earth also undergoes temporary excursions, partial flips, every 13,000 years. These temporary collapses of the magnetic field match perfectly with periods of global upheaval, climate chaos, mass migrations, sudden collapses of civilizations, and inexplicable leaps in human behavior and creativity. The last major excursion, the Lasham's event, occurred about 42,000 years ago. During that strange era, cave art exploded across the world. New symbolic thinking emerged. Ritual burials appeared. It was as if human consciousness suddenly upgraded, as if the species woke up inside a new mind. Coincidence? Or consciousness responding to altered electromagnetic reality? Some researchers believe the Lasham's event didn't just damage the environment, it rewired the human brain. The collapse of the magnetic field increased UV radiation, electrical storms, cosmic rays. Humans sought shelter in caves not only for protection, but because caves provided magnetic stability. And inside those caves, in the dark, the human mind was forced inward. Art blossomed. Myth blossomed. The inner world awakened. Now, consider this. Earth's magnetic field is weakening today faster than at any time in recorded history. The South Atlantic anomaly is growing. The poles are drifting faster. Satellites malfunction. Birds lose migration paths. Compasses deviate. Scientists quietly warn that we may be at the beginning of another excursion, a temporary flip. If consciousness resets during magnetic chaos, what does that mean for us? It means the way we think, our identities, our ego structures, our emotional patterns, may be approaching a transformation that humanity has not experienced in thousands of years. It means our anxieties, our existential crises, our cultural upheavals may not be random. They may be symptoms of a species standing at the threshold of a new cognitive age. Imagine millions of people experiencing vivid dreams, synchronicities, shifts in perception, sudden existential questioning. Imagine creativity surging globally. Imagine a rising sense that time is moving strangely, that the world is accelerating towards something. These symptoms are already appearing. People around the world describe a collective unease they cannot name, a sense of transition, a sense that something invisible is changing. What if this is the early stage of a consciousness shift, triggered not by culture, technology, or psychology, but by the planet itself? During magnetic reversals, animals behave oddly because their internal compasses become unstable. Humans do not have obvious biological compasses, but we do have subtle ones: cognitive, emotional, intuitive. And when those compasses begin to wobble, our sense of meaning, identity, and direction wobble too. Throughout history, dramatic shifts in human awareness often followed global environmental disturbances. Ice ages, volcanic winters, sudden warming periods, all corresponded with bursts of innovation or collapses of mental frameworks. But magnetic excursions coincide with the deepest psychological resets, the kind where entire symbolic systems rewrite themselves. If a major excursion unfolds in our era, it will not simply disrupt satellites and power grids. It will disrupt minds. It will disrupt values, beliefs, cultural identities. It will dissolve old mental structures and force new ones to emerge. It may dismantle the way we think about time, selfhood, technology, and meaning. A consciousness reset is not a disaster. It is a recalibration, a reboot, a widening. But like all transformations, it begins with chaos. As the magnetic field weakens, the world will behave strangely. Weather will become unpredictable. Atmospheres will glow. Electronic systems will glitch. Sleep will be disturbed. People will question reality more intensely. Anxiety and creativity will spike simultaneously, like two wings of the same phenomenon. Civilization may fragment or unify, depending on how we respond to the rising uncertainty. But the deepest change will happen quietly, invisibly, inside the mind. Because when the poles wander, consciousness wanders too. And when the poles flip, consciousness flips. The question is not whether Earth will survive the next magnetic reversal. It always has. The question is whether we will emerge from it as the same species, with the same understanding of ourselves and reality, or whether we will be rewritten, reborn into awareness that has not existed for 12,000 years. A consciousness reset is coming, not because humanity is broken, but because the planet itself is entering a new resonance, because every cycle ends with an awakening, because Earth is not just a world, it is a mind. And when its magnetic thoughts reorganize, so do ours. There is a peculiar echo that rings across the mythologies of ancient civilizations, a story so old, so widespread, and so strangely consistent that it feels less like imagination and more like memory. It is the tale of gods who burn the sky clean, a tale of fire descending from above, of heavens tearing open, of a light so fierce it rewrote the world. From Norse sagas to Hindu scriptures, from Aboriginal dream cycles to Mesoamerican codices, from Greek hymns to forgotten tribal chants, the same image returns again and again, an age of fire when the sky became a weapon, when the clouds glowed white, when the air itself turned to flame. Why would civilizations separated by oceans, isolated by ages, ignorant of one another's existence, tell the same story, almost word for word? Why did they all speak of a time when God scorched the sky, when the horizon burned like a furnace door opening, when the world reset under blinding brilliance? Scholars call it metaphor. Poets call it symbolism. But what if these myths are not metaphors at all? What if they are memories? Memories of a cycle we have forgotten, memories of a cosmic firestorm that once swept across the earth. Imagine sitting inside a cave thousands of years ago. There are no cities, no lights, no noise except the crackling of a small fire, and then the world above you begins to glow. First faintly, like a dawn that arrives too early. Then brighter, too bright for night, too bright for morning, too bright even for the sun. The air crackles with static. Your skin tingles. Animals flee, birds scream, and then the heavens erupt. Plasma storms tear across the sky, turning the night into a theater of cosmic fire. Auroras so intense they reach the equator. Lightning not from clouds, but from the earth itself, leaping upward like white serpents. The sun, in its violent cycle, unleashes flares that bend the magnetic field like a bowstring near breaking. Radiation floods the atmosphere. The horizon burns red. The air tastes metallic. The sky roars like a furnace breathing. If you lived through that, how would you explain it? How would a civilization without scientific language describe the sun exploding? How would a people without physics describe the sky tearing open? They would describe it the only way they could, with gods, with fire, with wrath, with renewal. And that is exactly what they did. In the ancient Rig Veda of India, it is said that Indra, the thunder god, burned the sky to cleanse the world. His lightning spear split the heavens, purging darkness with a fire so brilliant it melted mountains and reshaped the rivers. Modern researchers studying solar cycles quietly acknowledge that the language is eerily consistent with descriptions of extreme solar activity. Flares, discharges, magnetosphere collapse. In Greek mythology, Zeus destroys the world with thunderbolts not once, but multiple times, each destruction marking the end of an age, each age separated by thousands of years. He burns humanity clean when it grows corrupt, arrogant, or unbalanced. But the details are strange. The sky glows for days, people turn to ash in flashes, the oceans boil at their edges. These are not descriptions of storms, they are descriptions of plasma. In the Norse Ragnarok, the sky is split by Surtur, a fire being who raises a flaming sword that shines brighter than the sun itself. The heavens burn. The earth shakes. Rivers of fire run across the land, and then the world ends, only to be reborn into a new cycle of time. The myth does not describe an apocalypse of war. It describes a global firestorm, a cosmic reset, a new beginning after the old world is burned clean. In the Hopi tradition of North America, the people speak of multiple worlds before ours, each destroyed by elemental catastrophe. The third world ended with fire from the sky, fire that ran along the ground like snakes of lightning, fire that purified the earth. The description matches almost perfectly with plasma discharges, geomagnetic storms, atmospheric ionization, and upward lightning. In ancient Babylonian texts, the god Marduk battles a dragon of chaos and the sky burns during their war. The burning of the firmament is described as sheets of fire stretching from horizon to horizon, not war, a celestial event, a cosmic upheaval. In Aboriginal Australian lore, the rainbow serpent, usually peaceful, once rose in anger and burned the sky open, leaving scars across the land. Aboriginal myths often preserve unusually accurate geological events, encoded poetically but describing real catastrophic memories. Their burning sky story matches perfectly with the timing of the last major magnetic excursion. In the Popol Vuh of the Maya, the gods destroy previous ages in cycles. One of these destructions is by fire, a fire that falls from above, burns forests instantly, boils rivers, and forces survivors into caves. Archaeologists have found geological evidence of massive solar-induced lightning scars in the same regions, dating back roughly to the same epoch. But perhaps the most haunting myth of all comes from the Zoroastrian scriptures of Persia, which describe the Frashokareti, a final purification of the world not by war, but by fire falling from the sky. The fire cleanses, it renews, it resets consciousness, it ends cycles and begins new ones. Across all these stories, across continents and cultures, one theme stands unbroken. The sky burns the world clean. And after the burning, time begins again. Why would ancient people write these stories unless something so extraordinary, so terrifying, so beyond language happened to them? Why would tribes, empires, priests, and shamans decide that the end of the world comes not from flood or famine, but from a sky that turns to fire? Modern scientists now know that the sun is not the steady, gentle star we believed it to be. It pulses. It cycles. It enters states of intense magnetic inversion every 12,000 years. States that release unpredictable solar flares, plasma storms, and coronal mass ejections. These events can easily ionize the atmosphere, superheat the magnetosphere, ignite global auroras, and send currents through the earth that spark upward lightning strong enough to carve stone. To ancient eyes, it would look like the heavens engulfed in flame. To ancient memory, it would become a story of gods cleansing the sky. And this is where everything converges: myth, geology, astronomy, psychology. Because the last great solar catastrophe, the last time the sky burned, was about 12,000 years ago, the exact time when ancient calendars reset, when civilizations collapsed mysteriously, when coastlines shifted, when glaciers melted rapidly, when the global climate jumped violently. It was the end of the last cycle, the end of an age, the burning of the sky that countless myths describe. And if the cycle repeats every 12,000 years, then we are near the crest of the next one. Think about how myths describe the aftermath. They do not speak only of destruction. They speak of purification, of renewal, of consciousness expanding, of humanity becoming something new. The burning sky was not just a disaster. It was a transformation. The world changed. The people changed. Something ancient ended. Something new began. Now, imagine standing on a hill in those ancient times. The sun burns hotter than it has ever burned. The sky vibrates with colors you have no words for. Lightning erupts upward from mountaintops like luminous spears. The air hums with electricity. You feel your thoughts changing, your senses sharpening, your dreams bleeding into waking life. You do not just see the world ending, you feel yourself ending too, your old mind dissolving, your old identity melting under the weight of something vast. Perhaps consciousness resets happen not only in the mind, but in the sky. Perhaps the gods burning the sky clean were not gods at all, but the universe itself beginning a new chapter. The myths all agree on one thing. The burning is not the end. It is the beginning. Ancient cultures understood something we have forgotten. Something encoded in ritual, stone, religion, and story. When the sky burns, the world resets, and humanity either awakens or disappears. We are approaching the next cycle. The sun is stirring. The magnetic field is weakening. The myths are whispering again. And somewhere, deep in our collective memory, we already know what comes next. We have lived through it before. There are rumors that sit uneasily in the space between science and silence. Rumors that sound too precise, too coordinated, too quietly consistent to be dismissed as fantasy. Whispered in closed laboratories, traced in redacted documents, hinted at by retired engineers who talk only when the microphones are off, they all point toward one unsettling possibility. NASA has been running simulations. Not weather simulations, not orbital decay predictions. Something else. Something deeply classified. Something they refuse to acknowledge publicly. Simulations predicting the return of a catastrophic solar cycle. Simulations pointing to a specific year, 2046. To understand why that year matters, you must first understand the fear buried beneath these simulations. NASA's Solar Physics Division knows something the public does not. The sun is not behaving normally. Beneath the surface of our star, deep convection currents have begun twisting in patterns that match the early stages of historical superflares. Patterns seen in ice core isotopes that correspond to past cosmic disasters. Patterns that align with the 12,000-year cycle researchers never talk about on camera. But whisper the date, 2046, to anyone who has worked inside NASA's Heliophysics Directorate, and watch the silence stretch. Watch their eyes shift. Watch the air thicken with something unspoken. Because inside those closed rooms, behind layers of clearance, NASA has been modeling a worst-case scenario, a resonance between solar magnetic fields and Earth's weakening magnetosphere, a resonance that amplifies, escalates, spirals, until the sun unleashes an event unlike anything modern civilization has ever seen. A solar eruption so powerful it would not merely knock out satellites, it would alter atmospheric chemistry. It would distort Earth's magnetic field. It would generate currents so violent they would ignite the ground itself. The simulations suggest it could happen in the late 2040s. The convergence point keeps landing around 1 year, 2046. But the story doesn't begin there. It begins decades earlier. In the late 1990s, NASA launched the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, giving us our first real-time view of the sun. The data revealed something shocking. The sun's magnetic poles migrate irregularly, and during peak cycles, the plasma beneath the surface moves as if stirred by invisible turbulence. For years, these fluctuations were considered harmless, but patterns emerged. Long-term oscillations, repeating roughly every 11,000 to 13,000 years. The same range as the last global catastrophe. This discovery triggered a quiet internal project. Long-duration solar forecasting. It was never publicly announced. It was never given an official name, but internally it became known as Cycle Delta. Delta for change, Delta for disruption, Delta for the unknown. Cycle Delta's early results were terrifying. They suggested that the sun enters a hyperactive state every 12 millennia, releasing a cluster of superflares, not just one. These superflares can distort magnetic fields across the solar system, triggering climate chaos on Earth, accelerating pole drift, and causing geomagnetic storms violent enough to collapse technological society. NASA buried the project, but the simulations continued. Then the Parker Solar Probe was launched, officially to study the sun up close. Unofficially, it was sent to gather data needed to refine the Cycle Delta predictions. As Parker dove through the sun's corona, it recorded plasma behavior that matched ancient isotope records from the last catastrophic cycle. Shock waves that folded inward instead of outward, filament ropes twisting in ways only seen during historical superflares, temperature spikes that defied known physics. When Parker transmitted these anomalies back to Earth, NASA revived the simulations, and this time, they added the missing variable, Earth's weakening magnetic field. Since 1900, Earth's magnetic strength has dropped 9%. Since 2000, it has dropped an additional 5%. The poles are drifting faster than ever recorded. The South Atlantic anomaly is spreading like a wound. In the simulations, a weakened magnetosphere does not merely absorb solar energy. It amplifies its destructive effects. It becomes a resonant chamber, a tuning fork, a trap. And when those variables were entered, the models kept producing a date range between 2044 and 2048. The median year, 2046. Now imagine what the simulation room looked like the day those results appeared. Imagine the silence. Imagine the dread. Because the numbers didn't come from myth. They didn't come from prophecy. They came from physics. 2046 is not a prophecy. It is a probability. The classified reports describe a sequence of events. First, the sun enters a state of magnetic turbulence. Small flares increase. The corona becomes unstable. Satellites register unexplained spikes in radiation. Communications degrade unpredictably. Next, Earth's magnetosphere begins to wobble. The poles drift faster. Auroras appear at unexpected latitudes. The ionosphere fluctuates like a flickering veil. Then, the real terror begins. The simulations predict a superflare, up to 200 times stronger than the Carrington event of 1859. But unlike Carrington, this flare is not isolated. It is part of a chain reaction driven by the sun's internal resonance cycle, a storm that arrives in waves, each more intense than the last. When the first wave hits Earth, most satellites fail instantly. Power grids collapse. Compasses swing uselessly. Planes lose navigation. Cities go dark. But the simulations focus on the second wave, the lethal one. It is not just a burst of radiation. It is a geomagnetic shock that compresses Earth's magnetic field so violently that the boundary between atmosphere and space shifts downward by dozens of kilometers. In that moment, the sky itself becomes electric. Upward lightning erupts from the ground. Plasma arcs across power lines. Transformers explode like volcanic eruptions. The air glows white. And then the final wave, a coronal mass ejection so dense that it slams into Earth's weakened magnetosphere with the force of a cosmic hammer. The simulations show magnetic lines snapping and reconnecting across the planet. They show ground currents surging like electric rivers. They show auroras so bright they cast shadows at midnight. They show the global grid collapsing irreversibly. And buried in the notes, in a line written almost reluctantly, complete technological failure for 6-10 years. Possible partial atmospheric ionization. Casualties catastrophic. This is why the simulations remain classified. This is why NASA cannot speak. This is why 2046 is whispered, not published. But the most unsettling part is what the models cannot explain. At the peak of the solar onslaught, the simulations show a global psychophysiological anomaly. Biological systems, plants, animals, humans, react strangely. Brainwave patterns destabilize. Melatonin cycles collapse. Emotional regulation becomes erratic. Sleep becomes fragmentary. The border between waking consciousness and the dream state becomes permeable. The simulation notes call it neural resonance disruption. But one analyst wrote a more human phrase, collective psychological event likely. As if the sun doesn't just scorch the Earth, it scorches consciousness. And yet, every simulation ends the same way. After the storm, after the collapse, after the global blackout, after the years of recovery, human civilization emerges different. Not destroyed, transformed, rebuilt with new values, new frameworks, new awareness, as if the solar storm is not just a punishment, but a reset, a cleansing, a turning of the cosmic wheel, as if the sky burns to begin again. Now think about the coincidence. Ancient calendars reset 12,000 years ago. Myths describe a burning sky. Geology records magnetic chaos. Monuments hold plasma scars. Tesla spoke of a coming resonance. Modern solar data shows instability. Earth's magnetic shield weakens. NASA's simulations target the same cycle, the same window, the same threshold, and their model points to a year not far in the future. A year within your lifetime, a year the simulations fear. 2046, not the end of the world, but the end of the world as we know it. A cycle repeating, a chapter turning, a resonance returning, and deep down, beneath the noise of civilization, in the quiet rhythm of global anxiety, perhaps humanity already feels it coming. The sun is waking, the field is weakening, the cycle is cresting, and the clock, the ancient cosmic clock, is almost at midnight again. There are signs that appear long before any catastrophe arrives. Subtle, unnerving whispers woven into the fabric of everyday life. Signs the body notices before science does. Signs the mind interprets as fear, confusion, or strange coincidence. And among the earliest of these signs, occurring quietly, globally, and long before anyone realizes they're connected, are two phenomena that most people dismiss as psychological glitches: the sudden rise in sleep paralysis and the uncanny surge in déjà vu. On the surface, they seem unrelated. One is a terrifying paralysis that holds you between dreaming and waking. The other is a fleeting sensation, a moment when time folds and you're certain you've lived the moment before. But the truth is far stranger. These two anomalies, long treated as mere quirks of human consciousness, may instead be the first ripples of an approaching cycle, an invisible shift in the electromagnetic fabric of the planet that presses against the boundaries of the human mind. You are lying in bed. You open your eyes. The room is dark, but something feels wrong. You try to move, but your body does not respond. You try to breathe faster, but your lungs refuse the command. A weight presses against your chest. A presence lingers in the corner of the room, as if watching. Your mind screams, but your voice is locked inside your own skull. And then, just as suddenly, the paralysis breaks, like a spell lifting, and reality returns in one violent rush. You tell yourself it was only a nightmare, but deep down, something feels different. Now imagine this experience beginning to happen not just to one person, not just to those with stress or insomnia, but across entire cities, regions, nations, millions waking with their hearts pounding, unsure whether what they saw was a dream or a breach in reality. At the same time, déjà vu, the Earth's strangest psychological glitch, begins to spike. You walk into a cafe and feel you've lived the moment before. You hear a sentence you swear was spoken already. A gesture, a glance, a sound, a sunset. It all feels like an echo of a memory you don't possess. Psychologists say déjà vu is a memory misfire. But what if it's not memory at all? What if it's resonance? Because sleep paralysis and déjà vu share one thing. They both occur when the brain's internal timing system goes out of sync. They both happen when the boundaries between consciousness states destabilize. They both emerge when the electromagnetic rhythm of the brain slips, when the frequency of thought drifts. And what else affects electromagnetic rhythm? Earth's magnetic field. As the field weakens, something scientists are now observing in real time, its stabilizing influence on human consciousness begins to falter. The brain is a delicate electrical instrument, calibrated subtly by the environment. We forget that the human mind evolved inside a magnetic cocoon, a shield that shaped our biology. When that shield begins to fluctuate, human consciousness fluctuates with it. Sleep paralysis is one of the first symptoms. Normally, the brain shuts down muscle movement during REM sleep, so dreams cannot be acted out. But during magnetic disturbances, this timing mechanism falters. The paralysis lingers after consciousness returns. The mind wakes before the body. The electrical circuitry misfires, and the line between dreaming and reality thins. In ancient cultures, sleep paralysis was never dismissed as psychological. It was interpreted as visitation, omen, intrusion, awakening. They believed something crossed the veil during paralysis. Spirits, ancestors, shadows, gods. But modern scientists studying geomagnetic anomalies discovered something eerie. Sleep paralysis episodes spike during solar storms. They spike when Earth's magnetic field is disturbed. They spike during times of cosmic turbulence. What happens when the planet enters the early stage of a 12,000-year solar cycle? What happens when the magnetic poles drift, when the atmosphere ionizes, when cosmic radiation increases? The answer is simple. The boundary between waking and dreaming becomes unstable. Déjà vu emerges from the same instability. It is a temporal slip, a misalignment of brainwave synchronization, a momentary glitch in how consciousness processes time. It feels like memory because time itself feels like it flickers. In high electromagnetic environments, the brain becomes confused about sequencing. The present feels like the past. The mind becomes aware of its own processing delay. You feel you've been here before because your internal clock falters, and the moment loops inside consciousness. During magnetic anomalies, déjà vu surges. During solar events, déjà vu surges. During polarity drift, déjà vu surges. And now, around the world, people report déjà vu at levels never seen before. Doctors do not know why. Neurologists theorize. Sleep labs record strange data. But no one connects the dots. Because if déjà vu and sleep paralysis are rising together, then something is happening to consciousness on a planetary scale. Imagine a world where millions of people begin to sense time differently. Not drastically, but subtly. Moments feel repeated. Memories feel distorted. Dreams feel more vivid. Reality feels thin around the edges. People wake up gasping with sensations they cannot explain. They feel watched. They feel observed. They feel as if something is shifting behind the scenes. At first, the patterns appear random, then they cluster, then they intensify. In 2019, before the world shifted dramatically, scientists in multiple countries documented a spike in sleep paralysis episodes. Medical journals noted it quietly. At the same time, déjà vu reports increased nearly 40% globally. This correlation was ignored, but the timing was suspicious. Earth's magnetic field hit a sudden dip that year, a transient collapse recorded by satellites. Coincidence? Or the early pulse of a cycle beginning? In the years that followed, the pattern intensified. More people reported waking in paralysis. More people described intrusive dreams. More people experienced déjà vu multiple times a day. More people felt a strange timing distortion, as if the world was rushing towards something unseen. And now, with the magnetic poles drifting faster than at any time in modern history, these symptoms are rising again. Not in isolated regions, not in specific demographics, everywhere. Think about what that means. The brain is not just reacting to stress, it is reacting to the planet. Sleep paralysis is the neural system freezing from overload, like a circuit locking up under inconsistent voltage. Déjà vu is the temporal system misfiring as electromagnetic timing drifts. Together they form the first warning signs, early tremors of a consciousness quake triggered by the weakening magnetic shield. If this is the beginning of a larger cycle, then what comes next? Ancient civilizations answered that question clearly. Myths across the world describe eras when dreaming and waking blurred, when shamans spoke of traversing the sky, when prophets saw visions, when people felt they were being pulled out of their bodies. These weren't metaphors. They were descriptions of consciousness responding to environmental change. In Aboriginal lore, when the sky changes, the dreaming opens. In Vedic cosmology, as cycles end, the barriers between minds weaken. In Norse myth, before Ragnarok, people dream fiercely, see signs, feel déjà vu of events not yet lived. In Mayan tradition, when the world enters the end of a Bach tune, the veil thins. In Egyptian texts, when the magnetic gods stir, sleep becomes prophetic and time becomes fluid. Even modern psychology acknowledges something extraordinary. During magnetic disturbances, human intuition, creativity, fear, and cognition all spike. It is not mystical. It is biological. Earth's magnetic field is our unconscious environment. When it shifts, consciousness shifts. When it collapses, consciousness collapses. When it resets, consciousness resets. Sleep paralysis and déjà vu are simply the first tremors. Now, imagine where those tremors lead. As the field weakens further, dreams will become more vivid. People will experience lucid states naturally. Boundaries between imagination and perception will blur. Emotional waves will intensify. Ancestral memories may surface in dreams. People will report visions that feel too real to be fake. Collective intuition will deepen. Coincidences will multiply. Patterns will emerge. Déjà vu will no longer feel like a glitch. It will feel like recognition, as if the mind remembers a cycle it has lived before, because it has. And when the magnetic reversal accelerates, larger effects may unfold. Altered brainwave coherence, spontaneous mystical experiences, surges of creativity or panic, fragmentation of identity, heightened awareness. Some will feel awakened, others will feel unmoored. Consciousness will stretch, tear, reform. This has happened before. It will happen again. But all of it begins with the small signs, the nighttime paralysis, the daytime déjà vu, the small ruptures in the fabric of your experience, the strange certainty that something invisible is rearranging itself. When millions feel this at the same time, humanity is no longer experiencing isolated symptoms. It is experiencing the opening stage of a global cognitive shift, a biological response to Earth's transition into a new cycle. Sleep paralysis spikes are the body's alarm. Déjà vu spikes are the mind's alarm. Both tell the same message. The cycle is beginning. You are not imagining it. The world is shifting beneath the threshold of everyday perception. The mind feels it first. The body feels it next. Reality will feel it soon. And in the quiet hours of the night, when you wake frozen, unable to move, unable to scream, staring into the darkness that feels more alive than usual, remember this. It is not just you. It is the planet dreaming through you. It is the cycle returning. It is consciousness preparing for a reset. There is a mystery buried beneath the ground, one so quiet, so enormous, so deliberately forgotten that it challenges everything we think we know about ancient civilizations. Across continents and millennia, humanity has discovered vaults, stone chambers, underground sanctuaries, sealed passageways, whose purpose has never been fully understood. Some are impossibly old. Some are built with materials we cannot replicate easily even today. Some are aligned with astronomical precision, so exact it feels obsessive. And some were sealed so tightly, with such engineering paranoia, that anyone who studies them asks the same question. What were they trying to protect? And more disturbingly, protect from what? Archaeologists have speculated for decades. Floods, war, famine, sacred relics, burial rituals. Yet these explanations feel thin, like polite answers given to avoid the deeper truth. These vaults were not designed to survive ordinary disasters. Their architecture is too advanced, their placement too calculated, their composition too resistant to heat, radiation, pressure, and time. These vaults, scattered across Egypt, Turkey, India, China, South America, and even beneath the oceans, appear built not for the body, but for time itself. Imagine an ancient society watching the sky burn, watching the magnetic field collapse, watching reality distort in ways science is only now beginning to understand. Imagine generations passing down warnings not through myths, but through stone. Imagine engineers and priests working together to build structures that could survive not only physical destruction, but something stranger, something that threatens memory, identity, and continuity, temporal collapse. It sounds impossible, but the deeper you look into these structures, the more the impossibility dissolves into pattern. Begin with the Osirion at Abydos, Egypt, a subterranean hall built from granite blocks weighing more than 50 tons each. Placed with such precision that even after thousands of years of floods, earthquakes, and shifting sands, the stones remain unmoved. The chamber is too deep, too cold, too structurally reinforced to be a temple. It is a bunker, a vault, designed to endure something violent and cyclical. The inscriptions added later by the pharaohs look almost childish compared to the original stonework, as if the later Egyptians found the vault and simply adopted it. Then there are the underground cities of Cappadocia, Turkey, hundreds of feet deep, carved with air shafts, doors that seal from the inside, water systems, storage chambers, rooms designed for prolonged habitation. Not for days or weeks, for years. These aren't caves, they are survival complexes, built to house tens of thousands. Why would ancient people need to hide underground on such a scale, unless the world above became uninhabitable? But uninhabitable from what? Not war, not flood. The structures are too deep for either. They were designed to survive something that disrupts the surface environment entirely, something atmospheric. Next, examine India's Kailasa temple at Ellora, carved downward from a single mountain. No seams, no joints, carved with a precision that defies modern explanation. The underground portions are more mysterious than the external temple. Reinforced cavities, barren rooms without religious imagery, alcoves shaped like insulation pockets. Geological analysis shows areas where the stone appears heat-altered, as if the builders expected extreme temperature fluctuations outside and designed the internal structure to remain stable regardless of cosmic conditions. Look at Teotihuacan's underground tunnels in Mexico. They are coated in mica, a mineral with properties that shield against electrical charge and radiation. Why would ancient builders line entire subterranean chambers with a material that protects against electromagnetic disturbances, unless they understood something we do not? Move to Peru. Deep beneath Sacsayhuaman lie corridors sealed with slabs weighing dozens of tons. The entrance stones appear to have been melted into place by some unknown thermal technique, not chiseled, melted, hardened, locked, as if those who built them did not want the vault opened until many cycles later. Until the world reset. Across the world in China, the Longyu caves, thousands of cubic meters of underground chambers carved with impossible precision, carry striations on the walls that repeat like a coded pattern. The purpose? Unknown. The builders? Unknown. But the structures are resilient enough to survive earthquakes, floods, wars, even millennia of neglect. All these vaults share traits. They are deep. They are sealed. They are vibration resistant. They are heat-resistant. They are electromagnetically shielded. They are built to preserve, not bodies, but knowledge. Which raises a question far stranger than archaeology is comfortable answering. Were these vaults designed to survive a collapse not of civilization, but of time? What would a temporal collapse look like? It would not be a Hollywood spectacle. There would be no visible crack in the sky, no clock reversing, no dramatic freeze. It would unfold subtly, quietly, catastrophically. Time is not an absolute. Time is a relationship, a rhythm shaped by magnetic fields, gravitational flow, and the stability of Earth's rotation. When the sun erupts violently, when the poles drift, when cosmic radiation floods the atmosphere, when plasma storms electrify the ground, the very fabric of temporal coherence destabilizes. The brain experiences déjà vu. Memory blurs, perception loops, consciousness resets. During a full-cycle collapse, entire generations may lose continuity. Whole cultures may forget their past. Knowledge may vanish not because it is destroyed, but because the minds carrying it cannot hold it. This is not hypothetical. The Younger Dryas event, around 12,000 years ago, shows signs of abrupt climate chaos, magnetic field fluctuations, and a sudden collapse of global memory. Cultures reset simultaneously. Stone tools reverted to earlier forms. Symbolic systems disappeared. Languages died. Entire continents lost continuity, as if humanity passed through a mental bottleneck. What if ancient civilizations knew this cycle existed? What if they experienced it before? What if they built vaults not to hide, but to preserve their minds across cycles? If a temporal collapse disrupts consciousness, then knowledge must be stored somewhere physical, somewhere stable, somewhere that survives when memory does not. And stone, unmoving, unburned, unbroken, is unaffected by temporal turbulence. This is why so many ancient vaults contain no artifacts, no jewels, no bodies, no gold, because what they preserved was structure. The vault itself was the artifact, a message built in architecture, not language, a container for continuity, not treasure. Some vaults contain resonance chambers, rooms that amplify certain frequencies. These weren't ceremonial spaces, they were stabilizers, a place where groups could synchronize their consciousness, anchor themselves when the external world became strange. Other vaults contain small, perfectly sealed stone boxes, coffins too small for bodies, but ideal for preserving documents or crystalline memory devices. Some vaults contain star maps, a way to mark time when calendars fail. Some contain nothing but silence, perhaps because the knowledge they were meant to carry never survived the last cycle. But in the deepest vaults, in the hardest to access chambers, in the most incomprehensible structures, we find clues pointing to the same idea. They expected collapse. They prepared for collapse. They built for collapse. Not a collapse of civilization, a collapse of time. Imagine standing inside one of these vaults as the sky burns, the world above trembling, lightning erupting upward, auroras screaming across the horizon, the magnetic field distorting, your sense of time fracturing, seconds stretching, memories looping, identity blurring. But inside the vault, silence, stability, stone absorbing the tremors of an unstable dimension, a sanctuary not from physical destruction, but from the dissolution of consciousness. These vaults feel like seeds, designed to sprout after the storm, designed to reset humanity, designed to survive the unspeakable. And when you look at their distribution, the pattern becomes unmistakable. They appear in regions most affected during past solar events. They align with geomagnetic nodes. They anchor themselves against the planet's most stable bedrock. They synchronize with star cycles marking the end of ages. These are not random. These are not caves. These are not tombs. They are memory vaults. The question is not whether ancient people built them. The question is, who taught them how? Because some vaults appear far older than the civilizations attributed to them. Some show engineering knowledge lost for millennia. Some suggest architects who understood cycles we only rediscovered recently. Some imply that humanity has built, forgotten, rebuilt, and forgotten again across countless cycles. If this is true, then our modern world stands in the same place ancient worlds once stood, at the brink of forgetting. The magnetic field weakens. solar intensity rises, consciousness destabilizes, sleep paralysis spikes, deja vu spreads, dreams sharpen, reality thins. We are entering another cycle, which raises one final question. Where are our vaults? What are we leaving behind? What will survive after time fractures again? Because the ancient vaults whisper the same message in every civilization, every continent, every millennium. We knew the cycle would return. We prepared for it. Will you? There are questions humanity is almost afraid to ask. Questions that feel too large for language, too ancient for memory, too unsettling for the comfort of everyday life. And among all of them, one rises like a shadow at the end of every forgotten civilization, every myth, every lost calendar, every buried warning carved into stone. What happens when time reboots again? We imagine time as a line, a steady march from past to present to future. But the truth whispered through geology, astronomy, mythology, and consciousness itself is far stranger. Time is not a line. Time is a cycle, a loop, a rhythm, a pulse, a cosmic heartbeat that rises and falls every 12,000 years, pulling reality with it. And when that pulse resets, the world resets. But not in the way we imagine. Not with fire and destruction alone, not with a simple end. When time reboots, reality itself becomes unstable. The seams of existence loosen. The structures that keep memory coherent begin to dissolve. The human mind struggles to anchor itself. The sky behaves like a living thing. The world feels like a dream flickering between versions of itself. If you want to understand what happens during a reboot, you must begin with the small moments, because the reboot does not arrive like an explosion. It arrives like a glitch. The first signs appear in consciousness. Moments repeating. Days feeling strangely familiar. Deja vu surging like static electricity through the brain. Dreams leaking into waking life. People sensing something is off, with no ability to explain it. Sleep paralysis capturing millions at the border of awareness, as if the mind is being held between parallel timelines. And beneath these psychological symptoms, the planet begins to shift. The magnetic field weakens. The poles drift. The sun grows restless. The atmosphere vibrates with faint electrical patterns. Animals migrate erratically. Birds fall out of sync with their internal compasses. Even plants begin responding differently to solar cycles. As the reboot approaches, the world enters a phase ancient cultures described with eerie consistency, the time of distortion. A period when reality feels stretched, unpredictable, out of rhythm. The Maya spoke of borrowed time. The Egyptians called it the hours of confusion. The Vedic sages labeled it the Kali threshold. The Hopi call it the crack between worlds. It is the moment before the reboot, the moment when time holds its breath. Then, the real shift begins. During a temporal reboot, the Earth's magnetic field collapses to a fraction of its normal strength. With that collapse, the invisible scaffolding that keeps consciousness stable begins to flicker. The brain, reliant on magnetic calibration for sleep, memory, orientation, and perception, slips out of alignment. People experience strange bursts of intuition, prophetic dreams, disorientation, emotional waves that rise without warning, a sense of being out of body or out of phase. This isn't imagination. The human brain is an electromagnetic organ inside an electromagnetic planet. When the planet's field falls apart, the mind follows. As the field collapses, solar storms break through the weakened shield. The sky glows with auroras even at the equator, spirals of green, red, and violet burning across the horizon. The atmosphere cracks with electric sound. Lightning erupts upward from mountaintops. Plasma fingers writhe in the sky like ancient gods waking from sleep. The world feels alive in a way that is both mesmerizing and terrifying. During a reboot, humans are forced into a kind of introspective darkness, not because the sky is dark, but because civilization's lights go out. Power grids collapse, satellites fall, communication dissolves, the digital world evaporates in minutes. For the first time in centuries, humanity is alone with itself again. No screens, no signals, no noise except the pulse of the earth. And in that silence, the mind begins to reset. Temporal reboot is not merely a physical event, it is a cognitive event, a biological event, a rewriting of internal systems, Consciousness expands before it collapses. The edges of selfhood dissolve. People dream vividly, often collectively, witnessing shared visions shaped by the Earth's chaotic magnetic field. The sense of linear time weakens. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like moments. The past becomes strangely present. The future feels strangely familiar. Memory becomes fluid. During the last reboot, ancient societies wrote of losing entire eras in a blink. Stories of people waking after one night to find the world changed, languages altered, customs forgotten. Archaeologists call these sudden transitions cultural breaks. Myths call them the Great Forgetting, because when time reboots, memory does not survive cleanly. It shatters. It scatters. It resets. Knowledge is lost not because of destruction, but because the mind holding it cannot stabilize. Then comes the physical shift. Climate transforms rapidly. Oceans surge. Weather becomes unpredictable. Some regions flood, others dry. Volcanoes react to the geomagnetic chaos. Earthquakes cluster. The planet shakes off the last cycle like a snake shedding skin. But while the world changes violently, something else begins to form. A new timeline, a new rhythm, a new psychological baseline. After the collapse, after the chaos, after the forgetting, humanity enters what ancient texts call the dawn, a period of calm, a period of clarity, a period when consciousness stabilizes again, but differently, subtly altered, subtly expanded, subtly renewed. The last reboot around 12,000 years ago coincided with sudden leaps in symbolic thought, art, agriculture, astronomy, and storytelling. As if humanity woke up reborn. As if new minds opened inside old bodies. As if the species remembered something ancient, but did not know how it remembered it. This is the strange paradox of the reboot. It destroys, but it also awakens. It erases, but it also downloads. It burns, but it also seeds. It ends, but it also begins. Those who survive the reboot do not simply rebuild a world, they rebuild a mind. They inherit a planet humming with renewed magnetic frequencies, stabilized atmospheric currents, and a fresh temporal coherence. The experience of time feels different, either subtly or profoundly. Creativity surges, intuition strengthens, civilization leaps forward. Myths born from the previous age become the foundation of the next one. The reboot is not a punishment. It is not an apocalypse. It is a cosmic recalibration, a natural reset, a synchronization between Earth, Sun, and consciousness. So, what exactly happens when time reboots again? Here is the sequence the ancients described, and modern science quietly echoes. 1. The magnetic field fractures. Compasses fail. Birds scatter. Human biology destabilizes. 2. Consciousness softens. Dreams intensify. Deja vu surges. Identities loosen. Awareness expands. 3. Solar storms breach the atmosphere. Auroras burn across the sky. Electric storms rise from the ground. The world glows. 4. Technology collapses. Satellites fall like dying stars. Power grids explode. The digital world dissolves. 5. Memory unravels. Cultures forget. Generations reset. Time loops internally. 6. The physical world convulses. Weather shifts. Oceans move. Volcanoes awaken. 7. Silence. A collective pause. The world enters a breathless wait. 8. Rebirth. New rhythms. New minds. New civilizations. This is the reboot. This is the cycle. This is the pattern. And whether humanity is ready or not, the signs are whispering again. The magnetic field weakens. The sun grows volatile. People dream more vividly. Sleep paralysis spreads. Deja vu intensifies. Intuition spikes. Animals behave strangely. The world feels off in ways we cannot articulate. It is not a coincidence. It is a signal. Time is stretching. Time is bending. Time is preparing. And when it finally collapses and restarts, the reboot will not ask permission. It will simply happen, just as it has happened before, just as it will happen again. The question is not whether time will reboot. It is what humanity will become on the other side, because when the cycle ends, consciousness ends with it. And when the cycle begins, consciousness begins anew. Time does not repeat. It renews. It resets, it reboots, and every reboot creates a different version of the world. The next one is coming. And somewhere inside you, in the deepest recesses of your being, you can already feel it. Not as fear, not as prophecy, but as recognition, as memory.